Welcome to the Collide Kids podcast, hosted by Christen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey y'all, welcome to the Collide Kids podcast. I'm your host, Christen Clark. The Collide Kids podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. I am so happy that you are listening today. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. If this is your first time listening, I just want to say welcome. I'm so glad you're here too, and I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to listen to the end of every episode. That's where we have the kids only segment where kids just like you get to be on the podcast. Well, one of the things about this podcast is learning about people's jobs and what they're passionate about. It's really my favorite thing to learn about what other people like to do and how they got started and kind of why I started the podcast. Well, I did some research and I found out the top 10 jobs that kids want to be when they grow up. And I think this is so interesting. I'm going to read these to you, but before I do, I want you to think for just a couple seconds what you think some of these jobs might be, because some of them might surprise you. So I'll give you a second. Think of maybe one or two jobs you think might be on the list. Okay, you have an idea? All right, here we go. So here are the 10 jobs, and I don't know if these are in order or not, but I think they're pretty close. So we have teacher, doctor, veterinarian, actor, artist, firefighter, athlete, musician, writer or author, and police officer. Isn't that fun? I think those are so cool. Now, here's what's interesting. Up until today, I've been able to interview all of these jobs and many more, except for two. Do you know what they are? Right. Doctor and veterinarian. And so I'm working on the doctor, but today we're going to talk to a veterinarian. And so all my animal lovers I know are really excited right now. My guest is Dr. Tiffany Hall. She is a horse veterinarian, also known as an equine veterinarian, working as a specialist for almost 10 years at the Equine Medical Center in Ocala, Florida. From an early age, she has loved caring for animals and knew she wanted to be a vet since she was 10 years old. She is so thankful God has paved the way for her to become a veterinarian and loves what she does working with horses and their caretakers. Dr. Hall loves being a mama to her 2-year-old miracle baby and enjoys traveling, cooking, and spending time outdoors with her husband, Adam, and their 3 dogs. Listen, if you love animals, especially horses, you are really going to enjoy this episode. So here is my conversation with Dr. Tiffany Hall. Tiffany Hall, I am so excited to have you on the Collide Kids podcast today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, like we were mentioning before, when I look up jobs that kids want to be when they grow up, one of the top 5 is your job. So will you just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what your amazing job is?
Yeah, so my name is Tiffany Hall. I grew up in Kentucky, and as you said, most kids knew from about the time that I was 8 that I wanted to be a veterinarian. So that is what I do. I'm a veterinarian. I'm not doing what I thought I would do at 8. You know, I wanted to work with dogs and cats, but I actually work with horses now, and work in a big hospital, working as a specialist in internal medicine, actually. So it's a lot of fun. Challenging cases are what drew me to that aspect of veterinary medicine. There's lots of different places that you can work within veterinary medicine. But yeah, I get to be a veterinarian and work with animals. It's great.
That's amazing. And having that dream when you're a kid and then being able to do that now, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's quite wild to think back on it and realize that, you know, I'm living what I always dreamt of, you know, doing as a kid. I mean, at one point I wanted to be a pediatric nurse, kind of combined the two. I work mainly with foals, like baby horses. So, yeah.
That's so neat. Okay, well, I'm really excited to talk more about this with you. But before we do that, because this is a podcast for kids, we always like to start out with a joke. So do you have a joke for us today?
Yeah, sure. I'll give it a go. I'm the one that laughs in my friend group, not the funny one. But this is a joke that my vet school roommate would tell me whenever she felt I needed a joke. She was like the queen of dad jokes. So there's two olives, and they're playing around on the top of the table, wrestling, rolling back and forth, brother and sister. And they get over near the edge, and one falls off. And he looks down and he says, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" And the one from the ground says, "It's okay, Olive."
Olive. That's good.
Yeah. Yes.
I like that one. That's a good one.
It's a cute little one. And when I tell my husband that now, he just rolls his eyes at me, but I like it.
I like it. That's good. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about your job. First of all, how did you know when you were so young that this is what you wanted to do?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I think everyone just starts out when you're young, and a lot of kids just love animals, and you want to work with animals when you grow up. So I think that probably the first interaction I had with a veterinarian was after I got my first puppy when I was 8. I'd been asking my mom for a puppy for a long time. And then I got a puppy for my 8th birthday and went to the vet. And that's what introduced me, like, oh, there's this job where you work with puppies all day. And that is kind of what drew me to it. And when I was 14, I think, and still saying I wanted to be a vet, my mom said, "Okay, well, I think it's time you find out what this really means." And so I started working for that same veterinarian when I was 15 in the kennels first, and then became a veterinary assistant.
What a smart mom to be like,
I know.
You know what? You need to know what this is all about.
She really was. That was very
There's some
wise.
really cool parts, like holding puppies, and there's also some really gross parts. So you need to be ready for.
There's some really gross parts. There's some really sad parts. There's some really hard parts. And I think it's really wonderful that I got into it while I was so young and saw so many different aspects of veterinary medicine as I was, preparing and to apply to veterinary school, because it gave me a pretty good window into what that looks like, even though you can never really know the weight of that responsibility of any profession until you're actually the one in it. And I think for me, that didn't even really occur until about 6 years after graduation, to be completely honest. I think it's a very wise thing. Like, if children want to become veterinarians, that they really get exposed to what that means.
Yeah, I think that's so smart. Well, tell me a little bit about what it means to be a veterinarian, because you said you work with horses. What does your job look like day to day?
So my job, again, because it's a little bit more specialized, is very different than most. Most of the veterinarians who work with horses are usually in a truck or an SUV all day long, and they have all of their equipment in the vehicle with them, and they drive from farm to farm to farm. Sometimes you might see one horse at one place. Sometimes you might see 20 horses at one place. And so the day is very varied in terms of what you'll do and what you'll see. Sometimes it's simple, healthy horses. You have your schedule lined out, and then all of a sudden emergencies get thrown in there, and you have to shift course and shift your mindset and address that, and then get back to what you thought your day was going to look like. And so it's a lot of being flexible, I think, and patient, and kind of going with the flow. And a lot of people talk about, just in life in general, looking for what God puts in front of you at that moment. And I'd say that's definitely very true in the life of an equine veterinarian, especially, but even a small animal veterinarian, like a vet that works with dogs and cats, because you just don't know what's going to walk through your exam room door next. And you deal with, one person at a time, one patient at a time as it comes through. My specialty is even more so that, because it's primarily emergency admissions and occasional appointments, but primarily just walk-ins and emergencies, and, helping people deal with the unexpected, dealing with sick horses, sick pets that they didn't anticipate having a problem with. So it's definitely, you got to go with the flow.
Yeah.
If you're very regimented, like scheduled, want to plan for the day, equine practice probably isn't the best spot in veterinary medicine for you. But it's, always something different every day. I get to be outside. That's like the most wonderful thing. It's just, we get to be outside all day. And so, that's what really I think is appealing to a lot of veterinarians who go into equine practice, at least, is the outside aspect.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm thinking about like when I go to the doctor, if there's an emergency or something's going on and they have to check me, they're going to check my heart, they're going to check, and then I can tell them like, this is what is wrong. So how do you figure out what's wrong with the horse? They can't tell you, what's going on.
Yeah, they can't tell you. So I guess it's a lot like being a pediatrician or a pediatric nurse, like for babies and kids, like who can't yet voice what hurts. So a lot of it is reading the animal. Same is true with dogs and cats as well, but like reading them, their body postures, their behaviors, and especially with any veterinarian, it's the owners or caretakers. It might not be the actual owner. And in my case, it might be a barn manager or a groom, a rider, things like that, and trainers who provide you the information, the history, what it is they've noticed isn't quite right about that horse who they know so well, and going and trying to put all of those pieces together along with your physical exam of, listening to heart, listening to lungs, listening to the abdomen, those kinds of things, and putting it all together kind of like a puzzle piece to figure out what is likely happening with this horse right now. So there's a lot of human interaction in veterinary medicine too. It's not just the pets, but the people. Yeah,
that's so interesting. And I think you have to really be aware of, be a good listener. You have to be aware of what everyone's saying to you and take in all that information.
Yes.
So that's really neat.
Sometimes it can be conflicting information too, So
yeah,
you have to you have to kind of take it all in, and like I said, use it like a puzzle piece or, a mystery book kind of thing, and pick and choose, what is relevant and what is maybe just extra information, but not relevant to what's happening with the animal.
Yeah. What are some things that you love about working with horses? We'll be right back after this. Raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
I think horses themselves, and what drew it to me, I think is part of the challenge of just determining what is going on with them. A lot of it requires a little bit of intuition and, again, knowing their mannerisms, their behavior, how most horses, obviously each, just like people, each horse is an individual and they don't all read the same textbook. They don't all respond to situations the same way, but knowing what is common answer behavior to certain situations. So for example, we can tell when a horse is in pain by how it interacts with us when we walk up to it or walk into the stall, even if they're not showing very obvious signs of pain or discomfort. I often tell people during some of the harder parts of my job that, horses are just this big, strong, almost majestic creature, that God created. They're amazing to watch and to watch move, but they're also very delicate and fragile. God built them very interestingly.
Yeah. I think they're beautiful animals, and
they're so beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's always amazing to watch them run and to do all the different tricks they can do. And you have to know a lot about them and how they are supposed to be healthy or how they're supposed to look when they're good, right?
You do, yeah. And, that's the horse side of it in terms of what I like about working with horses. But what I like about being a veterinarian and what I do, year after year. Now I've been at the practice I'm with now for coming on 10 years in January. And there are a lot of people that I've formed, long-term relationships with now at this point too, as they move through different seasons and different horses. I being more of a specialized, sick horse kind of person, don't get to see the horses from like birth through their entire life and training and everything, but I get to see those people every single year with new horses. I mean, I have people here now, I've been here for 10 years, but there are people that I work with here who I have known for over 20 years because we worked together back when I was in Kentucky. So it's pretty,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's neat that you've had all those relationships for so long. You mentioned this earlier, that something that was important to you about being a veterinarian is not only working with the animal, but working with the people. Why is that so important for your job?
Well, I think that it's not something that when I was 8 and saying I wanted to be a vet that I thought of in any sort of way. I didn't realize just how significant the aspect of working with people would be in the job, probably until I got into high school, maybe college. But I think, the true responsibility of a vet is to the clients, the owners, the caretakers. We are responsible to the pet, but ultimately it's the owner, the people who we're serving. And as God calls us all to serve one another, that's really what my job boils down to, is that I am serving people through helping their horses and really helping them, again, especially, maybe not every vet day to day, but in reality, you're serving each client over time. And in my situation, through really difficult times that can be difficult to process, and walking with them through that is both trying and challenging and can drain you emotionally, but also really rewarding. And I find that I have had to find a way to really lean on God and his strength, because there's some days where I feel like I have nothing left, and you just got to rely on the Spirit, or, take a time out, a pause.
Yeah.
And
because I imagine part of your job is really emotional and really hard when you're facing a really sick animal. That can be stressful.
Yeah, and that's in any aspect of the profession, right? I mean, there's industry, which maybe you wouldn't run into it as much, but if you're in clinical practice, there are going to be times where you're just put in a really challenging position. We all want to save the animals and do everything we can for them, and sometimes there's not anything we can do for that person or that pet. And so, it can be very emotional at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about working with the foals. Tell us about what that's like. Because, baby animals are all just the cutest.
They are.
So what is that like working with baby horses?
Oh, I love it. There's, horses are amazing because they come out and they are ready to run across the pasture, within 2 hours of being born. It's completely wild, and so we have different goals they have to meet within the first 3 hours of life. And one of them is to stand within the first hour. They are literally starting to sit up and figure out how to use their legs in that first 30 minutes. And it's just so much fun to watch. The very best days of my career, I think, are the days that I get to take them outside for the very first time and put them out in a pasture and just watch them rip and roar, running circles all over the place. So it's very fun. Like I said, it's very challenging. It's not it's not like little puppies where you get to hold them and cuddle them, but occasionally we get ones that are small enough to pick up and hold. But
how big would that be? How big is foal normally weigh?
The average foal weighs about 100 pounds at birth, and we will have some that weigh 120 at birth. Yeah.
Wow.
A small foal is considered something that's 60 pounds. That would be very small. And then we have miniature horses, which would be more like beagle dog size, maybe, when they're born. So you can pick them up and carry them around.
Wow. 100 pounds.
100 pounds.
I can't imagine. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so
cool. I have
cool.
a great group of people that I work with that, help to handle them, control as best you can control a horse.
Right.
The 100-pound ones are sometimes harder than the 1,200-pound horses, the 1,000-pound horses, they can sometimes be harder to control or handle. than the big guys, because the big guys have learned a little bit of manners
Yeah.
by the time they're that size.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Tell me something that you have learned about God through your time working as a veterinarian.
Oh, I have learned so much about God through my time as a vet. Veterinary medicine, like I keep saying, is challenging emotionally, personal life wise. And there was certainly a time where I thought, I don't know if I can continue to do this aspect of veterinary medicine. And so I had to learn a lot about myself and God walking me through that, because I was just so positive, I've wanted to do this since I was 8. How could this not be really where he wants me to be, is as like working as a vet. So just his grace, and honestly, that if I put him first and take that time and spend time with God every day on my own, even if that's just listening to worship music in my car, that he will get me through whatever I face that day. And the days that I do that are so much better. so much better. If I put him first, spend that time with him and say, whatever you put in front of me today, just help me walk through it. And those go better than when I try to hold the reins myself. God knows what's happening. So that is one thing, just that I can rely on him and turn to him at any point. And if I do that, rely on his strength, then I am better each day because of that than I could ever be on my own.
I love that you said that you listen to music and worship music kind of helps you, because that helps me too. And I think sometimes just spending time in prayer and listening to music or listening to a message or something that kind of reminds you of who God is in your life, it directs the rest of your day. And that's so good that you have that.
And I think if each of us just takes that few minutes, even of silence, God has something for each of us and he'll put it there. And so my worship music has become even more important. And that's where I've learned to give myself grace too, and that there's not this checkbox list of things that God's expecting me to check off every single day. Right. He is giving me grace for each season of my life as well. And and
I think, like you said earlier too, just rolling with the punches, kind of going through the rest of your day, being flexible, and then recognizing that even in those moments where you're getting interrupted or an emergency comes up, God is still with you in the midst of all that. He can still speak to you in those moments too. So it's important to just have that time with the Lord so that you're reminded that he's still with you for the rest of the day. Right? Exactly.
Yeah. It's not just that moment that you're focused on him, but I think that helps to invite the Spirit into your day. Just that any little thing you could do. For some people, it might just be silence, right? Sometimes we just need silence. Yeah, it helps invite him into the day, and practicing a little bit of a pause every day. There's an interruption into that day that I wasn't expecting, that's then going to throw my schedule off, or, I'm not going to get done what I thought I might. And I think that's true in life and school and, everything, that we just take that pause for a moment and say, okay, what am I supposed to be seeing here, God? What are you trying to show me? What do you need me to do in this moment? Then it really helps me to exercise more compassion and empathize with the people that are standing right in front of me. And not that it's a lack of impatience, but to actually see them and see what does this person need right now from me at this moment, because I think people are all different. And so one person might need a really direct, bare facts kind of, this is what's going on, and another person might just need more compassion. And then we have some clients who honestly, there might not be anything wrong with their animal, they just might need someone to talk to for 15 minutes. And so I think that practicing that pause and that patience is much easier if I've had that little connection with God myself that day.
That's right. And I don't know about you, but I tend to be where I struggle being in the moment. So I know I have 10 things to do later in the day, it's hard for me to stay focused on that one. And so really having to practice being a good listener, I think sounds like it's really important to being a vet.
It is. Yeah. It's really important to be in a vet. And I think, like I said, I'm the same way. Like I'm thinking about other patients in a different spot, or I'm thinking about phone calls I still need to make, or thinking about, what time is it? Do I need to go run to daycare yet?
Yeah.
Any number of things. And so, yeah, it's a practice of being in the moment. I think that's true. Like I said, not just of being a vet, but in life in general, like being in the moment with the people you're with is crucial. It's something I really had to work and focus on. I can't 120% of my brain can't be on my patients all the time. So,
right. Okay. I want to hear your craziest, wildest veterinarian story. What's the, that's not too
right. I was like,
for kids.
Wildest, probably maybe not kids podcast.
Okay.
But,
right.
Oh man, that's so hard to say. Yeah.
Have you ever been kicked by a horse or?
Oh gosh. Well, the babies, like I said, the babies are harder than the adults. Yes, I have been kicked by a horse, thankfully not like I was close to the horse. That's one of the things you learn pretty early on is like where to position yourself so that you're in the safest position when you're working with 1,200-pound animals. So pretty close to him, so I couldn't get like the full force of the kick. Mm-hmm. Left a pretty big bruise. It turned a little, green towards the end there. And then I've been bitten.
Really?
I've been bitten by a mare. We were working with the foal and I was holding the mare for my technician, trying to keep my technician safe. And I was watching what she was doing as she went to go bring the foal back away from the mare so that we could treat the foal. And she didn't like something, the way the foal touched her at that moment or whatever, because, they discipline their horses. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm on call right now, so.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, I was sitting there holding the mare and she just like grabbed and bit me and left a nice big scar. But the foals are the tough ones because when they're feeling good and frisky, they can headbutt you by accident. They kick you as they're running away, just feeling good. Stuff like that.
That's so fun. Well, this has been so good. I've loved learning about your job and I've loved all the things that you shared with us today. I think it's important for anyone who's listening who might be interested to do what your mom said and go and try it out. Like whatever the thing is you think you want to do, giving exposure to that, I think is so smart and giving you the realistic view of what these jobs look like.
It is. I think it's a really important to get the full picture of what it looks like for sure. Because it is a great profession, as so many are, but it's not all rainbows and butterflies every day. But in the end, it's very good. You said something just now, about like whatever you want to do and plan. And that's another thing I had to learn it's from Romans 12. And it's where Paul is talking about, we each have our own special gifts and we're each part of the body of Christ, each with our own unique gifts and our own unique calling. And without each of us performing our own function, we can't perform well as a whole. And that was something I really struggled with, even within the veterinary profession. I was looking at these other vets who are going on all these mission trips and doing all these very clear, obvious things for God. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just going and working on a horse every day and coming home. Like, it's really, what am I doing? And so I really like that portion of Romans 12. So it's, 3 through 8. And it's just talking about everybody's individual service and your individual place that you are put by God. Like, you can serve in any aspect.
That's
it doesn't have to be in ministry. It doesn't have to be as a missionary. It doesn't have to be, something very obvious. It can be absolutely anywhere that you can serve another person, or, providing help for another person, generosity, all those things.
Right. We all fit in the body of Christ and we're all needed. If you don't do your job, there's people that suffer because you don't do your job. So we're all needed. And we say this a lot on the Collide Kids podcast, but you also don't have to be an adult to be used by God. You can be a kid and God can do amazing things through you. And so I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's so good.
Yeah. I think sometimes kids are the best at serving God.
They are.
To make other people's days special.
So true. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah,
Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests to share a memory from when they were a kid. So do you have a memory you want to share with us?
Yes. So actually, this is probably where now looking back, where my love for the animals and especially babies began, and that's going to my grandfather's farm. So I'd go with my grandfather out on the farm. He had cattle, was raising calves and sheep, primarily raising lambs. And I would always go through and look for the sick or injured lambs and take them back to my grandparents' house. And, my grandmother would prepare the bottles for me to hand feed them. And my grandfather would splint the little broken leg, things like that, so that I could try to help nurse them back to health and get them back out to their mamas, back out in the pasture.
Aww. So it really has been in you this whole time.
I think so. Yeah, it really has. And looking back on it, I realized what a part my grandparents had in forming who I was too, that I didn't realize at the time,
Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. Grandparents are great. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being here. This was so good. And I'm so glad you got to share your story today. Yeah. Wow, I loved learning about Tiffany's job. I think it's so cool that she gets to work with horses and be outdoors and really have all these interactions with the baby horses and all of that. So fun to learn about that today. I think her mom was so smart to give her exposure to the job when she was young, really to see what it was like. There's some parts that are really fun, and there's also parts that are really dirty and sad and emotional. And so that's really good that her mom gave her that experience at a young age. I would have imagined that it's so important to know a lot about animals and how to medically care for them. But I thought it was so interesting that Tiffany said being a good listener is so important to being a vet. She really has to pay attention, not just to the animal, but also to the caretakers and the owners and the people that work with the horses all the time. It's so important to learn how to listen to others and be present in the moment. I also love that she shared that one of the things that really helps her with her job is to put God first in each day, taking time to spend with him, even if it just means listening to worship music as she goes to her various appointments or just spending time in prayer first thing in the morning. It really helps prepare her for what she's going to face. And it also reminds her to rely on God and his strength throughout the day. God is in all the moments. He's not just there when we do our quiet time. He's always with us. And it was important for her to ask God, what are you trying to show me, or who can I show love and compassion to today? If you'd like to learn more about the Equine Medical Center, you can go to their website, emcocala.com, or you can check out their Facebook page, Equine Medical Center of Ocala. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is a part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So here is an animal joke by my friend Hope Sanchez. Check this out.
Hello, my name is Hope, and I am 9 years old. Here is my joke. What kind of bird is always out of breath? A puffin!
A puffin. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Hope. Hey, if you would like to be on the podcast just like Hope was and share your favorite joke, or maybe you have a Bible verse or a quote or a song you want to share, just go to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab at the top that says Kids Only, or you can find information about how to send it to me through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a few ways you can do that. First, be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast and leave a rating and a review. That's so helpful, and I just love reading those. You can also share this episode with friends and family and tell them why you and your family like to listen, or you can go by my website and click the link at the top that says support. And anytime you think about it, I always appreciate your prayer support as well. Well, I hope you guys have a great week. I know it's getting a little bit colder outside, but I think it's so good for us to be outdoors and enjoy the beautiful fall weather. So get outside and play in some leaves. Well, in case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Thanks for listening.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news, because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between, and all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids podcast.